Hello, hello. This is Traci Harrell, and I am so excited today. I am excited to be here with Miss Louise Perrin. Louise, I could do a bit of an intro, but I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us all about.
Okay. Well. First of all, Tracy, thank you for asking me to be a part of this conversation today. I am just thrilled to be here. Um, but to answer your question, a little bit about my background. I am Louise Perrin. I am Vice Chair of Advancement and Development for the Board of Directors of the National Black MBA Association. And I am a retired Senior Vice President or State Farm Insurance Companies. And I was with State Farm for 33 years. So I spent the greater portion of my career with State Farm Insurance Companies, starting as
Awesome.
a student and retiring as Senior Vice President.
All right. Did I say that you look amazing today? I'm like, Lord, I should have got dolled up or something, but you look awesome.
Well, thank you. I mean, even though we're doing everything, well, mostly everything from home, I try to make it a point of just getting dressed every morning. I mean, not in business dress, but just
Yes.
getting dressed, and that for me anyway, it just makes my day more complete and just puts me in the right frame of mind.
I love that. First lesson learned from Louise Perrin, who, by the way, I'm asking you to help mentor me because you have this level of elegance and grace and style that I absolutely adore. So please continue to share any words of wisdom now and in the future. So, what I brought you here today to talk about, Louise, is this concept that we're working on. This project. It's called the Equity, and it's an Equity and Inclusion Initiative. So, it's the Bigger Than Me Success Series, and it's designed to achieve racial equity and inclusion in business, education, wealth, and health. About systems change. And you're part of the National Black MBA Association. How long have you been part of this group?
Well, I've been on the board for a little over 7 years. And before coming on the board of directors, I was involved with the National Black MBA Association at the chapter level for about 3 years. I will tell you, I didn't know about the National Black MBA Association until I was an executive. That's when I
Really?
learned. And so I said, I'm in a position where I can really mentor others, but I wish I had known about the association earlier in my career so I could have had the mentorship and not having to learn by trial and error. And that's why I'm so passionate now about giving back to the association and helping its members, professional members, student members, and helping them advance their careers.
I love that. I love that. I was fortunate enough to get exposed to the National Black MBA Association when I was in college. And I was at the University of Florida, and someone came to talk to black students. I was in the College of Business, so there wasn't any of many of us. It was me and the person from Black MBA, and I was so grateful because they told me about things that I would not have had any real clue about because I was the first person in my family to go to college. So they talked about internships. I had great grades in school. That was never an issue, but the idea of getting an internship to make a pathway into these organizations and other many other things. So I've been involved literally since college, and I can tell you that what a blessing this organization is, and I'm glad to hear you just celebrate, to your point, the value of the organization for youth and for
Yes.
professionals and for senior leaders. It's really has something for everyone.
And I'm so glad that awareness of the National Black MBA has expanded. I got my undergraduate degree from Rutgers University and my graduate degree from Cornell University at the Johnson School of Business. And those are predominantly white institutions. And so we didn't have chapters on those campuses, didn't know a lot about the National Black MBA Association. But now when I go to a conference and the career fair floor, I see both of those universities there.
Yes.
Rutgers University is there recruiting, Cornell University is there recruiting. So we've come a long way, and it's
We
great.
have come a long way. You're right. Even the University of Florida, with their one or two black students in their business school, they bring a busload of people every year, a plane load, wherever we are. So they're there recruiting, but they're also there with their students there, getting exposure to these top companies that are hiring at the conference.
Yes, and I will say that I would encourage anyone who is watching this video, if they have not attended one of our annual conferences, if they have not attended our career fair floor to find internships whenever they're making a job change or just out of business school or undergraduate trying to find a job, please come because we are one of the largest, if not the largest, career fairs in the United States with so many companies represented, and they're there to hire.
They
They
are.
have openings, and many companies hire on the spot.
I'm
Uh,
glad you said that. They are there to hire.
Yes, so please, if you have it, come. If you know friends, families, um, uh, business associates, let them know about our annual conference and career fair and just the value that it brings to students and professionals as well. And let me just say entrepreneurs also.
Totally. So I'm going to talk about two things. Like I said, this was not part of our planned conversation, but I think it's really good. It's really good for us to share. So I worked at three major companies in my entire 25-year career: IBM, Disney, and Microsoft. Each of those jobs were secured at the National Black MBA Conference. So when I say they are hiring at the Black MBA Conference, I am a testimony. I am a story of success. And then if I think about my entrepreneurship, I'm an entrepreneur now, and I've been connecting with the Black MBA, leaned into their scale up pitch competition, and lots of excitement around that. So tell me more about this entrepreneurship piece. For you to say that, I'm glad you mentioned that. But we support entrepreneurs as well.
Yes, and we're identifying ways to support them in even larger ways moving forward. Our National Advisory Council submitted a white paper to the Board of Directors last year with several recommendations, and one of them was around entrepreneurship. And this is, I think it's a fact and one thing that I truly believe in. One of the pillars of success in the Black community is Black entrepreneurship. You know, it creates Black wealth, it creates the Black, it helps it create and stabilize the Black economy. They hire Black people. The Black businesses in the United States hire 4% of the Black eligible working individuals in the United States. So just think about with those that exist today, 4% of the Black working eligible population could be hired. So just think if we could double that and triple that, what that would mean for the success of the Black community.
Mm, I love it. It's interesting that you say that because we're actually bringing this particular topic forward as a part of this initiative. So if you think about, the initiative is called, Achieving Racial Equity and Inclusion in Business, Education, Wealth, and Health. So when you think about Black business, one aspect of achieving racial equity and inclusion in business is having a more inclusive environment for those in corporate America. But another part of achieving racial equity and inclusion in business is making sure that Black businesses have an equitable access to contracts and governmental uh, businesses. Um, we actually just hosted a session as a part of Tabor 100, which is a group here. But we had someone on our governor's council who's part of this initiative, and his role is around Black businesses. So,
Yes.
that is a huge part of what we're doing. So there's two aspects to achieving racial equity and inclusion in business. It's making sure Black businesses are supported, but also making sure that people in business and corporations or small mom and pop shops also have an equitable environment.
Yes, and it's that evolution. I know before the focus was getting more Blacks into corporate America
Mhm.
and climbing that corporate ladder and getting them into executive positions, professional and executive positions within corporate America. But on the other side, there needs to be equal balance, right? Because entrepreneurship and owning small businesses, and they don't necessarily have to be small, but owning businesses, Black businesses, is the other piece of it. So one is not the be all end all. You have to have both.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. All right. Louise Perrin in the house. That's awesome. So now we're gonna continue the pivot. So I mentioned that this initiative is really about achieving racial equity and inclusion in business, education, wealth, and health. So it's really about systems changes. How do we change the system? And so we've had two sessions. On 7/7, we talked about really this call to action. It was a case for change. And we had LaPray George, come in, and he did a bit of a recap from a think tank that we had done as a part of the National Black MBA Association. We did a think tank a few years ago, which is really part of how my business even got started. Is we did this research, and it was clearly identifying what are the key challenges that Black professionals experience in business, getting to the next level. And the four things that were identified were unconscious bias, unequal performance standards, similarity bias or lack of structures, lack of support structures, and a lack of CEO accountability. So my question to you is, have you ever experienced in business, have you as someone who's part of the board, who ended her career as a senior vice president at State Farm Insurance, have you ever experienced unconscious bias or this concept of unequal performance standards in business? 'Cause a lot of times people don't want to tell their stories. And what we discovered in sessions 1 and 2 is it's critical that we tell our story so people don't feel like they're the only one. The only way for us to truly change things is to acknowledge the current state and then change the status quo. So I'm just curious, have you ever experienced?
Um, I'm gonna take this maybe in a little different direction. I
Perfect.
think we all have
Mm,
experience conscious or unconscious bias within our careers and within our personal lives. What I will say that let's start with the individuals. It's individuals who have the biases, right?
mhm,
It's individuals who create the structures and the systems. So you have to start with individuals, right? If you really want to make the change, because if you look at a system, how are you going to change a system unless you change the individuals that are part of the systems, that develop the systems, that manage the systems, right? So that's where everything has to start at the individual level. And throughout my career, that's how I looked at it, of saying, I can, yeah, the system. But no, I'm going to work with the individuals within that system and do whatever I can do to, and maybe not necessarily about necessarily helping me, but helping others that come after me.
mm.
So one of the things that one of my executive coaches told me a long time ago is that, and I'm looking at some of my notes here, is that seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Little Stephen Covey, I love it. Absolutely.
Seek first to understand and then be understood. So I always took time to understand those individuals and what was it that was causing them to have a certain view around certain things or on certain people. And then understanding that, try to work and change them. So that's how I kind of worked it. And then it's also when you're in a position to make change and to change how people think and thus changing the system, you
Mm.
have to make your voice heard. You cannot be afraid to have your voice heard. So, for example, as senior vice president in my role, I was in a lot of conversations around people, right? And you could hear it where there was a much greater comfort level of saying, okay, well, this person may not quite be ready right now, but here's their background. And so we feel comfortable of moving them into this next role because they have a familiarity with this person, a greater familiarity with this person or these individuals. They're like them. So there's a greater level of comfort. But I had to speak up in some of those meetings, and I said, well, let me offer another point of view. There are these individuals over here who may not be quite ready either, but have demonstrated the same capabilities as the individuals that you just talked about. So why would we not be willing to give them an equal chance as well? Okay. And then talk about all of the things that they would do to expand their awareness around these individuals that they may not have. And when you do it that, I had a lot of success in doing that. And so in conversations like that, you start to change how people think, and then you start to change what is viewed as the system.
Oh my God, I love you. So, yes, that is exactly what this initiative is about. We talk about systems, we talk about the need to change systems, but we also focus on it's about changing individual hearts and minds because we, as individuals, we create the culture in any business. We are the system, to your point. So, please know that you just covered about five things that I was going to ask you about in that perfect example. You just
And
talked about courage and being a champion. That's what we're going to be talking about, as one of the focus items. You just did it. You just demonstrated what that looks like as a perfect scenario on how you do it in a loving way. You're not being disruptive. You're basically being instructive, constructive.
yeah, yes. And I always said this because I broke a lot of barriers at State Farm. And I always said it's an honor to be the first, but it's clearly not an honor to be the only.
Mm,
And so my role, I knew my role pretty clearly, and that was to bring others along with me. So I routinely had conversations with the head of HR, with the CEO, with the chief marketing officer and the chief agency officer around people. That was just part of what I did because I recognize exposure
mm,
is one of the key elements in advancing your career. You have to have exposure to the decision making makers, and they have to have knowledge of who some of these individuals are if they're outside of their normal sphere of sight,
mm.
right?
I
And
love it.
one of the things when you talk about the system is and I'll call them processes, is understanding how you can expand or change certain processes that allows that exposure to be increased to people, to associates of color.
Mm. I love it. I love everything you're saying. We could drop the mic right now, but we're only halfway through, so I'm gonna keep talking. This is awesome. You've actually already covered more than I thought we were going to cover, and you just, wow. I kind of, I'm an in the moment kind of girl, so you can see I'm just like, you know, basking in your amazing amazingness. Is that okay? Just taking a moment.
Share another tidbit that I learned
Yeah.
over my career.
Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't matter your role, your position, your age, your station in life, is everyone can lead. Everyone is a leader, right?
Yes, yes.
I also shared with people when they came to me, wanting to me to be a mentor or many cases a sponsor, right? And then I would ask them, who are you mentoring? Who are you sponsoring, right? You may not be an executive, but you're surely a manager, right? You're a director. So who are you sponsoring,
Mm,
right? To bring up. So we all, no matter where you are, we all have a responsibility in this initiative, right? To move Black people forward. Everyone has a role in that. And so it's just understanding, what your role is, how do you play in moving things forward?
I love it. So, Louise, you've done two things, and I'm going to ask you a question that may make some people feel uncomfortable, but we're gonna go here anyway. I was going to ask you about what it means to be, the two of the words we're talking about in this next session is around being a champion and having courage. And it sounds like you're just a natural champion. You're naturally courageous, but I need for you to talk to those individuals, black, white, or other, who don't know how to be a champion, who have chosen not to be a champion. I've literally had senior leaders in companies say to me, I opt out. Inviting them to participate in a series like this, inviting them to share their thoughts, inviting them to, I opt out. I'm good. Well, what
Mhm.
would you say to them? What would you say to like someone to change their hearts and minds about, I know another word we talk a lot about is personal accountability.
Yeah, I think, let me just say, I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
Um,
I love stories.
and then I'll get answer your question. Um, I was in an executive development program, and that's a program that they have you in before you go out as a vice president. So I was in corporate headquarters and doing everything they had asked um, all of the people in the program to do. And one of the vice presidents called me down to his office, and he said, Louise, why aren't you helping us? I said, what do you mean? You know more about the Black community, how to market to the Black community, what the needs are of the Black community in terms of our products and services. So why aren't you helping us? Okay. So I had to check myself. I went back home, had a conversation with my husband, and said, clearly this falls outside of the job description that I have now. But I said, this individual was right on calling me on this, that I have more experience in this area than anybody in the organization. So why am I not, stepping up and helping, not just helping the organization, but helping the Black community and our Black policyholders. So I took that to heart, and I made it my mission, and developed a strategy for the companies, how they can move forward, and helping our customers that live in more urban communities. And from that point forward, I recognized is that yes, you are being hired to do a role, but it goes beyond that. There is an expectation that you are an advocate for your people in your community. And I think if you do otherwise, there's a loss of respect for you as an individual and a professional.
Mm, mm. I would agree. I actually did lose respect for this individual. Like, wow, really? Okay. I mean, honestly, within my space, after we had the National Black MBA, the conference, and it wasn't like I mean, I've always been active outside of my regular job. So when I worked at Disney, I was president of their Black, employee resource group, and Disney is the largest single source employer in the nation. So that was just because I felt like, I was a senior leader. I had, pretty courageous. We could talk and do and drive change. Um, but when I encounter people that are like contrary, it's like, wow, I don't typically try to push them beyond their comfort zone. I think you could just model the right behavior, and hopefully that through positive psychology and them seeing the positive changes, that will hopefully move them in the right direction. When I think about this initiative, it's not going to be for everyone, because we're basically saying we are changing the status quo. We are not talking about changing the status quo. We're moving beyond what they call courageous conversations to courageous activations. That's what you just described. You just basically said it's past time for talk, it's now time for action. And as we think about achieving racial equity and inclusion in business, we're moving to courageous activations. We're basically saying all, black, white, and all involved. It is time to be a part of the solution. Would you agree you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem? There's really not really a gray area.
You're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. One of the things I will say
Hmm.
is is that um, be comfortable in who you are, know who you are, but also recognize where you are,
Hmm.
and what the culture is of that organization and the readiness of that organization or entity for change.
Yeah.
Because one of the I you know you have to be careful because what you want to do, you want it to be sustainable change,
Yes.
right? And sustainable change can take longer, right? It may not be as fast as you would like, but as long as you've got to have the forward momentum,
Hmm.
right? Um, but that was one of the, and this was an executive coach again who shared that with me. He said, Louise, be who you are. You always, that authenticity, you have to be who you are, but also recognize where you are.
I love that. I love that. And that advice is so sound because, part of the thing that we're doing is we talk about, Brene Brown. One of her things she likes to say is, you know, stories we own, we get to write the ending, and stories we don't own us. And so a lot of what we talk about in this initiative is, telling our stories, the value of sharing our truths. And we are creating a safe space for people to share their truth. There's certain things that are just like a level of urgency now. At least we want to make sure that people are able to share their truths. And if they're ever in an environment and in a space where they feel like they can't even share their truth, they can't even be authentic to share their experiences, that in itself is a time when we have to put the official brakes on and decide if that's an organization that you want to be a part of.
Yeah. And I have to say, the first thing, you have to be authentic with yourself. So I'll share another story.
Hmm.
I was an executive, I was an agency vice president. Felt my career had stalled a bit. You see people being promoted above you that you feel didn't have the results that you had. And so I did a lot of soul searching and said, I enjoy what I'm doing. I like the company, that I'm with. I love the people that I work with and the people I lead. So I'm just going to have fun and enjoy this and being the true, authentic Louise. Not recognizing before I wasn't being the true me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe I was, but when I let all that go and just say, you know what, if you like me, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. But I'm gonna do me.
All right.
And when I started that, Traci, my career took off again. I let the true me
Mhm.
come through. And I even heard individuals say it. They said, Louise has really changed. She's not the same Louise I saw before. And it was just before I'm letting people to see the authentic me.
Mm.
And I
Would you
would
say you were more? Let's talk a little bit more about that. You know what that means, but I mean, I think in corporate America, we talk about having to, put on our corporate face, and we're not necessarily tell people who might be listening and watching this story, what that means to you. What was the unauthentic you mean, and what is the authentic you
yeah,
mean?
so it's like you had these curbs that you never, you were working within this, and a lot of these things were probably put in my own mind based upon what I thought I knew. And so, and I was a little afraid of letting uh, people outside of, my direct reports. So the higher ups, I was a little afraid of letting them see who I really was. The fun Louise, not just the professional Louise. But when
Mm.
I let them see who I really was as a person, not necessarily just as a professional, but as a person, like I have a great sense of humor. And when I started letting people see that, they were like, huh? It didn't fit into what they thought about me. And so it really changed their view of who I was. And then the doors just open because people hire people who they like, who they feel can be part of the club, and that they feel comfortable around. So by letting them see the full expanse of who Louise is, it just all the barriers were just like they dropped.
Mm. That is awesome. That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, you're amazing. I'm gonna say it again because you really are amazing. This is awesome. So now I have to ask you another question about um, um, allies.
Yes.
So the importance. How do you define an ally? How do you define the term advocacy? I kind of see those two very closely related, but how would you define them? And what would you share kind of as a description of why they're important to be a part of this initiative?
Uh, that's a good question. What is the
Thanks.
difference between an advocate and an ally? I never really thought about it in those terms. I think an advocate is someone who is really personally pushing something forward. It could be an individual, it could be a cause. I mean, they're invested in the outcome. I think that's what an advocate is. An ally, to me, is someone who may not benefit right from the outcome, but certainly recognizes that the change needs to occur, and they will help in driving that change, but they aren't necessarily a beneficiary of that change.
And might not be as engaged. You think there's kind of an ally which says, "I support you, I am here with you," but an advocate is like, "I am digging the ditch with you because we about to
Right,
change some things." Right.
exactly.
So whether they're benefiting or not, or they see the community benefit, they're basically just there's a level of greater intention,
Yeah,
greater
advocates,
activity.
allies, I think they see the unfairness of it all and they don't think that the current state is right. And so they want to support that. But as you say, they aren't going to um, be in the ditch digging, at the same rate and at the same depth, but they will support and help when they can.
I love it. And then the other term we're talking about, which I see that you clearly are word throughout your entire career, is this term of a champion, which is a little bit even more intense than if I had to say that these were tiers. An ally is supportive, an advocate is in it to win it, and a champion is like, I'm going to die on this sword because this is critical. This is a must do right now type of initiative. And that's basically what I am. And that's what I was at my last company. It really didn't matter to me because I don't have children. It didn't matter to me what the consequences were. Once we had our that think tank, and once it was crystal clear to me that these key challenges, I had legacy leaders tell me, Tracy, we've been talking about this same thing for 40 years. The numbers are actually getting worse. There are less blacks in leadership roles now than there were X number of years ago. The numbers are not looking like they're in our favor. Not only that, is you think about the pipeline, every aspect of our story, wealth, business, it's all looking worse. And I thought, you know what? If not me, then who? And if not now, then when? So as I was working in corporate America, fighting for equity and inclusion, it really didn't matter that they said that I was ahead of my times. And I heard that several times. It didn't make me stop pushing the envelope. It ended up, with some other divine outcome for me that oh, I thank you, Jesus, for it, right? But at the end of the day, it could have been identified as a traumatic end. It was a glorified ending to my career because I was actually, I felt so proud and courageous, like someone who did the right thing. Like if, and everyone is not expected to be a champion that's willing to die on the sword, right? That we're not expecting that from everyone, but we got to have some people who are willing to push the envelope in order for things to change. Bruce Thompson. Let's talk about Bruce for a minute. He's a champion for change. Bruce is our current interim president for the National Black NBA Association. And when I mentioned this initiative to Bruce, oh my goodness, he not only has he been in it, but each time we have a session, he goes a little bit more in. He's a little bit more in. He's like the godfather of this initiative, right? He talks about he referenced Frederick Douglass. It talked about power, the shift of power and how you have to make a demand. So let me ask you about. Let's talk a little bit about leaders like Bruce Thompson
Mm-hmm.
who are willing to invest to be champions. We need more of them. We need some white ones too, right? Because he and I, we were having that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Bruce first.
So,
Give him some
so
props
not
and why is that
only,
important?
yes, so not only, do we need champions like Bruce, individuals who are willing to put it all out there. They have to have people behind them supporting them, right? Because it's not fair to them to ask them to put it all on the line, and then we're not backing them up with the support that they need to be successful. So that is incumbent upon all of us,
Mm,
right?
that's it.
As when they're putting themselves on the line and doing the things that are needed, that we have to support them and not support them just with talk. We have to support them with action. We have to support them with time. We have to support them with money, right?
Mm,
That's because then it will be all for naught if that support is not there.
that's beautiful. That sounds. I mean, first of all, I'm just grateful. I'm blessed to hear you, as someone who's part of the national board, basically say that, well, that Bruce is out there fighting the fight. Did you remember he wrote this letter right after George Floyd, and it was called "Racism: America's Unfinished Business." It was kind of the statement for the organization, a statement for the board to say, no one in the Black community is happy about what has happened, and we, as a national Black MBA organization, we will be part of the leadership that moves this initiative forward. And he basically, it was a huge call to action for every corporation, every academic institution, civic organizations to say, we need to unite to address America's unfinished business. That's what we're doing right now. So from a board perspective, what are your thoughts about, he in our last session, he actually said, there has to be a level of accountability for companies that aren't willing to engage in creating a truly inclusive environment for Black professionals. At some point, you feel like members of the board, or I know you can't speak for the board, but you as a member of the board, can we have you? Are you a champion and an advocate to be willing to connect with this community, the board around a stance that National Black NBA Association is able to take? Because if we can't do it, nobody can do it. Because we are a national organization, premier organization. At some point, it's like, I believe, you know, for 50 years we've been driving change. What is that?
I,
What do you think the role is now?
I think the role is we have corporate partners. We have those corporate partners that have been with us for many, many years, and they have supported us through, sponsoring our conference and being exhibit sponsors and hiring our students and our members. I think it is about well, first of all, I think you have to know how to do it. I think many companies are struggling with the how. It's not. I don't think no one intentionally doesn't want to. It's how. So having some concrete things on how you can get to the desired state becomes critical. And I think that's some of the things that we as an association can offer. And I think now companies there's a heightened awareness around the importance of this. And if we can come in with some concrete steps on how corporations can get to that state, and it's not going to be a once and done, it has to be an ongoing effort.
I love that. So we actually have that. We actually have very clear next steps. So my question to you is, and Bruce said this, and it was interesting because when you bring, 8 to 10 people together who are amazing, the conversation always escalates to a much more synergistic place, right? So by the time we ended the conversation, we were talking about, the fact that without some demand, power never concedes anything. And so one of the demands was, we know how to achieve equity and inclusion. I've created this term called corporate chokeholds. It's basically those four challenges that we documented in our executive summary: unconscious bias, unequal performance standards, similarity bias, which is a lack of support structures, as well as a lack of CEO accountability. That's what the National Black MBA Association identified in our think tank as key challenges. I call them corporate chokeholds because at the end of the day, those are the things that will take us down, right, as Black professionals in corporate America. And it's not as simple as an academic term. So what we said is, if we have, which we do, we now have a very clear methodology. I call it these bigger than me moments, right? So we get to call it out. So basically, we'll talk about that in more detail. But assuming we have very clear plans around adaptive leadership, it combines positive psychology, adaptive leadership, and self-directed learning. It's a beautiful thing. These bigger than me moments are basically this trademark term that's going to make it very clear what anyone can do to stop corporate chokeholds in corporate America, to end the output. Now, you're not gonna stop having unconscious bias, but how do you end the negative outcomes from that? These are these bigger than me moments. You can basically stop, change the status quo. So my question to you is, if we have solutions, known solutions, things that we want people to try. Again, it's going to be like you said, it's not a one and done. It's a process. If we have known solutions, and we're going to be presenting known solutions by 10-10, which is our next session, we're basically saying, corporate partners, by 10-10, say I'm in. I'm into acknowledging that there is a problem and I want to be a part of the solution. What do we do with companies that say, I'm not in? I have other priorities. I'm not moving forward. Good luck with that. We're doing some other things over here. We're focusing on this. What are your thoughts about, what do we say to those companies? What do we do? Because Bruce made a point of saying at some point there needs to be some accountability. I just want to get your general thoughts. No commitments, but what are your thoughts
Yeah.
about that?
I guess I would really have to give that some thought, um, be, because where you have the companies you have the influence with are those who are partners, right? Those who are not partners with the association, I would say, where's your influence? So you have to look at, how do we influence those corporations who have been partners with the National Black MBA and holding them accountable for that. So you have to look at, and uh, haven't really given this thought. Do they remain a partner? I don't know. But you have to look at it and um, ask those partners, how would you like us to hold you accountable for
Mm.
making progress? I would be interested in hearing what they would say.
You're genius. Can you believe we only have 5 minutes left in this interview? This has been such an amazing time. So hopefully you will allow me more time with you in the future. We are going to end on time. But is there anything else you wanted to share? I got a couple more questions, but is there anything else you want to share that you haven't had a chance to communicate in the last 5 minutes?
Uh, let me just share this. Um, because I was very successful in my career as a senior vice president of bringing teams together, and then that team resulting in bringing forward results that was best in the organization. And I think this works for any team, because this century and the next century, it is all about team. It's not about the individual. It is about teams. Teams are the currency of today and tomorrow. So as senior vice president, I thought long and hard about what is my role as senior vice president, because to me, it is critical no matter where I am, what I'm doing, is that when I leave, I want to leave in a better state than when I came. So after I thought about my role as senior vice president, it crystallized in my mind, and it was simply this: to create an environment where everyone feels valued and they understand the value that they bring to the team and the organization, and where we individually and collectively achieve beyond what was possible. And that beyond what everyone thought possible was important, because if you just achieve what you think is possible, then why am I even here? It's to take a group individually and collectively to achieve beyond what they thought was possible. So no one can do anything by themselves. It takes a team, it takes a group of people, and everyone within that group has to feel valued and understand what value they bring to whatever you're working on, and that leader knows what's important to each of those individuals and what's important to the group, and that you achieve those things together. And when you do that, the sky is the limit. The sky is the absolute limit, because you're creating this environment of success for everyone.
Wow. Drop the mic. Louise Perrin in the house. Oh my goodness. You're so amazing. Thank you. We are at our time. Please know that I look forward to having you back again, to bringing you into this conversation, continuing to move this forward, because we are going to do exactly what you said. With this Bigger Than Me success series, we're going to achieve racial equity and inclusion in business, education, wealth, and health. And we're going to do it, to your point, in a way that and comprises all that we think we can do collectively. It's going to be way more than I thought. Every session, like I said, every session, it's more than I thought it was going to be, right?
And,
Every
and let
time.
me and let me just say this:
Yes,
it's bigger than me. And my husband
yes.
brought this quote to me years ago, and I think he said it was from the chairman emeritus of Coca-Cola, and it
Mhm.
says, "It doesn't matter who gets the credit; it's the idea." And just push that idea forward. So even if it's your idea and someone takes it, it doesn't matter as long as that idea is being moved forward. And so sometimes we get caught up into, well, that was my idea. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If someone else, takes your idea as their own, then I did my job.
You know what I love about this Bigger Than Me movement, what I love about this Bigger Than Me, um, and it's like I said, it's kind of been my primary focus because it has to be bigger than us, right? It has to be bigger than us, and for me, it is 100%. And my honor to have you as a part of this movement, and we are going to continue to change things. This is Traci Harrell. I'm here with Louise Perrin, and it's Bigger Than Me. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Bye.